a whole heap of other things, new technologies wrapped into it, ancient manuscripts, you name it. There's an awful lot contained within the trust that goes way beyond money. Money is just not that important, but it will help.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a 3D tool. All right, well, again, it's, trust or no trust, the biggest fear, or their biggest fear, is one of us activating our DNA, or a lot more of it, or, as one other speaker puts it, even just one of us anchoring our own presence down to within the 3D self, and that's the biggest fear, and it's really important to take that to heart. It entails huge amounts of power, not just telekinesis, but even psychokinesis and bilocation. You can almost, do what you want in a lot of respects. And so you can imagine how much responsibility such power brings, and that's why everybody's higher self is pretty adamant that unless you're healed spiritually and healed from any wounding or traumas or false programs, what have you, any increase in power and freedom for that matter will be incremental until the egoic mind really sort of catches up with that. Go ahead.
Yes, personal responsibility is another thing required on the mental planes, because if you don't exhibit that personal responsibility with the abilities you have, you will drop down again. Because I've seen people that I know who have lost their abilities because they thought they were a god, or let's attack this group and let's attack that group. When you go on those planes, you have information comes to you rather than you going to it. That's why they call it research, because the information is already contained within you, all of it. Everything that took place in the universe is inside of you. And that's why they call it researching, because you already have it and you're just trying to pull it forward in the 3D. And, and there's people who decide that they don't like this particular ET group, and let's wipe them all out, because suddenly on those planes you are able to see a lot more. You do see a lot more than the 3D narrowband spectrum we currently see it. And so suddenly you can, some people with certain abilities that have been switched back on, the higher you go up the mental planes, will be able to see the non-form in the 3D. And of course they don't, the last thing they don't want is everyone really seeing. And that's their fear, and they're riddled with fear now, because too many people are waking up, too many people are beginning to sidestep the lower astral, which is known as hell, and also the upper astral, which is known as heaven. It's very blissful, but it's still a trap.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I really believe you when you said, that the people who start to activate powers, those same powers, end up destroying themselves with those powers if their consciousness level doesn't synchronize and keep up respectively with those rising powers. And you're, the old saying, you're playing with fire, whether it's your powers or someone else's powers. Yeah. So, okay, let's. So I just want to start it off with that, folks. It's first and foremost, whether you want to see the trust funds released or whatever. It all starts with you internally. That decides your outer world and what you're able to attract. And it's as simple as that. Yeah.
Well, to me, the funding is external gratification. Mass arrests, people talk about on the internet, is external. This war is all internal, not external.
That's right.
And we're winning the inner war heavily, and a lot of their operations have now ended and have done over the last, certainly from 2013 onwards, where they're not able to interfere as much. Not only humans, but also the ETs are not allowed to interfere anymore after the peace treaty was signed in August of 2016. That changed everything. So there's less interference now, and the manifest abilities has gone up, the consciousness has gone up, the increase in source energy has gone up into this arena, which is having an effect on people. It will have more effect eventually on the ones that haven't raised their consciousness level enough, so no one will get left behind. And but people are starting to notice the effects, and and it's essential. We started talking about shadow work and integrating the shadow and doing your inner work 3 years ago for this time, because this is our time. Thankfully, many in our group have done that, and they're seeing the benefits, because it's chaos at the moment. And if you've got chaos and you've got a load of shadow and inner work that you haven't completed, then this is a rough time for those people.
That's right. That's right. And, you and I and many others have known for quite a while. In fact, Wilcock said it best, that even the non-physical darkness, let alone the physical cabal, is just an outer reflection of the collective internal shadow. The two sort of exist hand in hand, kind of thing. And so the more we do our inner work consistently, week by week, the more the cabal loses power, disappears, and what have you, just by quote unquote magic.
Yeah. If everyone fixes themselves, we don't have a problem on this planet.
That's right.
The cabal,
that's perfectly put.
The cabal at the top end, we discussed this on the call this week. The cabal at the top end think we're all stupid and savages, and that we need to be controlled. And technically, there are aspects of that where we're almost childlike in our behaviour. We don't look after each other. It's dog eat dog, and yes, I know that they created some of that, but that doesn't mean to say that we had to go along with it. They'll roll out this program and that program, but it doesn't mean to say that we have to buy into it. And people have to learn to stand in their own sovereignty. And sovereignty, people think, oh, great, freedom. No, sovereignty comes with personal responsibility. We've handed over everything. All our life force energy is being traded for pieces of paper and bits of metal called currency. Currency is said that way for a reason, because it's not an energy transfer. And people are doing awful things to make money all around the world. Well, there's better ways to make money, but then the system closes it off. And so that's kind of why the trust is being mentioned in a monetary term, because the first thing was to cut the energy flow. All our life force energy was being traded for pieces of paper. All our earth assets and resources was being traded for pieces of paper. Well, the top controllers are not interested in pieces of paper with numbers on. They want the assets, they want the life force energy, and they want resources. And we're collecting the whole planet in this trust, which is now out of their hands and into someone who wants or a group of people who wants to disperse it, it will be seen as handing money back, and it belongs to everyone. But essentially what is really being handed back is life force energy, which they stole.
Yeah. Yeah, the so-called money is just a physical or 3D expression of that energy.
Money is a control system. It came from Orion. It's not from here. It's a control system. But the idea of the funds is to get everyone on this planet with the 5 basic essentials in life. Need, not greed. So, food, clean water, shelter, clothing, and energy. We've got 1.3 billion on this planet with no access to electricity. It boggles the mind. So the funding from that aspect will improve everyone's lives. And then the next stage, that we would look to is teaching, not educating, teaching people to not need money. So ultimately, the trust with all the money, and it does have all the money, every single asset on this planet belongs to the trust, because the whole planet was being harvested until Kim took over. And we're giving it all back, because gold coming out of Africa or some bunker in Indonesia doesn't just belong to the Rothschilds or some fake Chinese elders or Rockefellers or somebody else. That gold in the ground, or that mineral, or that oil in the ground belongs to every single person on this planet. And this is what we've forgotten. We think it belongs to, there's oil in North Dakota, so that means it belongs to America. Well, who owns America? Well, the Crown did. The Crown being Rothschilds. Except the Crown is an asset of the trust. So is the Federal Reserve. So they no longer own what they thought they owned, as the trust does. So, oil in North Dakota doesn't belong to America. It belongs to everybody on the planet. And you compensate those who mine it, fair enough. But it doesn't belong to them.
Yeah.
All the resources on this planet belongs to all of us. And that's essentially what the trust is going to do. It's going to hand it back. And obviously they don't like it.
Yeah, definitely. Let's get into, so let's start from, I suppose it's not exactly the beginning, but I'll just say it for the sake of conversation. Let's start from the beginning, about these 5 main tribes of the Atlantean period, I guess, late Atlantic period, I guess. Let's start off with there to lay the background for the audience.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
There was a lot of wars going on this planet. The Atlantans, or should I say Antlantans, will give you a better description. We're fleeing from another war, and we're hiding out here. And that war came here. And,
from another planet, or was it an off-world war?
Yes. They thought they could hide here. And so that brought in all kinds of other groups. And the humans at the time there's 5 to maybe 7 of the original tribes. And the original one was in New Zealand. And it was utter chaos. They were using weaponry known as the Flash weapon, which creates deserts. We never had deserts on this planet until they started using that advanced tech. And it was chaos. And one particular group decided to offer support to the tribal people. And they were warned by the guardians of this planet, who are very ancient beings, and I mean ancient. They live thousands and thousands of years, and they ignored it and signed a treaty agreement on kangaroo skin, and which is located in New Zealand, the original, and signed up with the group known as the Draco. Now, initially, they helped, but it was like everything else, and this is the problem with humanity in general. We take short-term gain and end up with long-term pain. This time it's going to be different. It's painful at the moment for a lot of people struggling financially, etc. But it will be short-term, and we will have long-term gain and long-term peace. So they signed that deal, and then the Draco took over. And of course, it was the Draco that ran the trust. That trust has been going thousands of years also. And their goal was, because of our lack of knowledge and understanding, was to harvest the whole planet. And that's essentially, they come very, very close to ending it. Because once that particular group harvest all the resources, harvest the life force energy, and harvest the souls, they then destroy that planet and make it uninhabitable. They've done it to many, many worlds. But they had to complete their task by 2012, and there was sufficient here with knowledge to prevent that taking place. Of course, they left in 2000. The Draco left, the bulk of them, apart from the entity known as Marduk. He was the
before we get into Marduk.
Yeah.
Yeah, before we get into Marduk, just to bring a bit more, I suppose, understanding, it was one of these 5 tribes that did this deal with the Dracos. Is that correct?
Well, they all had to sign off on it, but the treaty was signed on the kangaroo skin in down under. They were kind of the main tribe. They would be known as Aboriginals, which is really AB, as in blood group, originals.
Yeah. Okay, so it was just these 5 tribes that were different human races.
No, they were different tribes in different parts of the world.
So non-human as well, you're saying?
No, they were all human, but they were all connected. We've had tech. We've had tech. People say, "Well, how can they travel?" Well, the Vedic texts, which has nothing to do with India and everything to do with Russia or the Rus. There was Vimanas and Vitmanas on this planet 110,000 years ago, until that previous war ended that civilization. And then we had tribes dotted all over the world, which were all linked. And so all 5 or all 7, it's a bit murky with how many there was, all had to sign off on that. And the guardians, known as the elders, advised against it, and they were best pleased when they went ahead. But we got given a lot of tech, not technology in the current format. Agriculture was technology back then, and it worked well for a short period of time, and then once they got the foothold in, we were in trouble, and we've been in trouble for the last 16,500 years with those elements running the whole planet.
I see. Okay. All right, so these 5 to 7 tribes, they were the main different racial groups on the planet.
Yeah.
Okay, so by that you mean white, black, Asian, Middle Eastern, that kind of thing?
Yes.
or were these actual nation states? Okay.
No, there was tribes
Okay.
dotted all over the world.
It was what, sorry?
I said there was human tribes dotted all over the world, but there was 5 to 7 main ones.
Main ones.
At that time.
Okay. And just for a bit more clarity, Atlantis, was that more like a state that consisted more than one of these tribes, or was it just one of the tribes?
Well, the Atlantis, as I understood it, was a craft, not an island. As I understood it. I can't confirm that one way or the other. But, there was Atlanteans all over this planet in various places. Not just being stuck in one region.
Mm-hmm.
But they,
okay, sure. Now, go ahead.
They came over so many different time periods that it's not easy to define that the Atlanteans were here in X AD, or they were here over. There's a number of different epochs and eras of time.
Yeah.
And they came back. Once the wars of 110,000 years ago, every 13,000 years they came back to stop this planet going into a higher frequency.
Mm. Yep. Okay. Now, as far as our current time period, I guess, when did the majority of the Draco leave?
Between April and September of 2015.
Okay. Interesting. Because if you ever followed Corey Good's information, he mentioned a moment where there was a representative in a private meeting in an atrium in a hotel somewhere, obviously a deserted hotel, with the Royal Draco itself, asking for a deal with the so-called sphere beings to, for the sphere beings to allow him to leave the solar system in exchange for pretty much all of the cabal. I'm sure you've probably heard that story at all, and that was around 2015 as well. So it kind of correlates.
Yes, they did leave then, but they were under orders to leave from the council, and there is Draco on the council, and they are under heavy surveillance, shall we say. But they knew, some would argue that they left of their own volition. I don't believe that was the case. The frequency had changed after 2012, and that they couldn't, a number of them couldn't handle that frequency either, particularly the Royal Group, Anu and all that. And so once the other layers below the Draco and the control system started collapsing, they knew their time was up, and they hopscotched very quickly out.
Yeah, it's easy to forget that that they can't even handle higher planetary frequencies as the planet ascends.
They're a low vibration group. They're mired in violence, and they're a militaristic race. The brains behind them are what's known as the Mantid group. They're the brains. They're the ones with the tech. They're the ones with the AI and the Matrix, if you want to call it that.
Mantid, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. Well, again, higher frequencies in general, they just can't really function too well in that sort of environment. And, there's a motivator to participate in mass meditations if I've ever come across one. Now, let's get into Marduk. Sounds like a charming character.